Step out of 2A, sir. First class isn't for upgrades. The cold voice of the chief flight attendant cut through the calm of the first-class cabin. The boarding pass, pinched between two fingers painted red, was held up to the cabin light as if it were a forgery. The entire cabin turned to look. Phones were raised. A few cameras quietly blinked to life. Adrian Cole, 48, just sat there, calm. His eyes were deep and still, like a midnight lake. He didn't answer, not because he was powerless, but because he knew silence often revealed more than any defense. To those around him, he was simply a black man in a tailored suit who looked out of place. What they didn't know was this. With a single tap on the phone in his coat pocket, the airline's entire global booking system could choke, and the smug smile on that flight attendant's face would vanish without a trace. That afternoon, the Oakland airport shimmered in the golden light of late day. Coffee cups clinked on metal trays. Boarding announcements echoed over loudspeakers. In the stream of rushing travelers, Adrian approached gate 27. His left hand carried a slim leather briefcase. His right held a phone lit with an email update from Aegis Grid Systems, the company he founded. He was bound for Washington, D.C., for a closed-door meeting on data policy, no fanfare, no press cameras, but a matter of enormous consequence. Adrian relished the moment just before boarding. It was the bridge between two worlds, from a room glittering with spotlights to the enclosed seat in the sky. A pause to breathe, to remind himself that he was still human, amid the wires, the numbers, and the algorithms. First class today, Mr. Cole. Owen Pierce, the young gate agent, hesitated as he scanned the ticket. His strained smile betrayed his doubt. Adrian nodded once, answering with a single word. Yes. It was the kind of silence he knew well. That beat of hesitation before covering it with a cheery, "Have a pleasant flight." A silence that left a cut sharp as glass. Are you sure you belong here? He entered the cabin. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of new leather. 6 first-class seats lined in pairs, a faint strain of classical music. Adrian found 2A. The white man in 2B glanced up from his iPad, eyes flicking over the fitted suit, the Italian shoes, then stopping on his skin. The slight lean away was like a dull blade, no blood drawn, but pain all the same. Adrian stowed his case, sat and touched the noise, cancelling headphones. A birthday gift from his daughter, engraved with tiny words, for the moments between takeoff and arrival. Love you, Dad. His heart softened for an instant, but peace was shattered. Dana Harlow, the chief flight attendant, hair in a sharp blonde bob, uniform pressed razor straight, approached. Her eyes were cutting, her voice polite but icy. Sir, I need to verify your boarding pass again. Adrian looked up. Is there a problem? Not at all. Dana forced a smile. Just a minor system check. He handed the ticket. Dana studied it under the light, like she was searching for invisible ink. Eyes around the cabin turned toward him. Richard Hale, in 2B, raised a brow, intrigued. From rows behind came whispers, probably a mistaken upgrade. Or some kind of points hack. You know how it is. Adrian inhaled deeply, exhaled slow. He had thought he'd made peace with these moments. But the old, corroded question surfaced again. How many times must you prove yourself before people believe you belong? In his wallet, the Redwood Premier Platinum card glinted beside a silver business card etched with his name. Adrian Cole, founder and CEO, Aegis Grid Systems. He didn't reach for them. Not today. Not to prove himself to a suspicious attendant. He opened his laptop, adjusted a presentation. Slide 27, headline bold, Digital Infrastructure for Public Health Equity. But a whisper cut through from behind. Why do they always act like victims when they're caught? Adrian turned his head slightly. A teenager held up her phone, the red light blinking. She whispered, "He didn't do anything wrong. People need to see this." He lowered his gaze. He had never wanted to be the center of a story. He only wanted to sit quietly, to fly to his destination. But sometimes, the story finds you. The first-class cabin hushed. Dana's voice returned, louder now, more firm. "Mr. Cole, I need to speak with you again. Seat 2A may have been reassigned. Please step to the galley." Adrian closed his laptop, his hands still laced together. His voice was low but resolute. "No, I'm staying in my seat." A few gasps broke the silence. Someone whispered, "He refused." The man in 2B smirked. "It's not that deep. Just let them check." Adrian turned his head, meeting his eyes. "I already did twice. I've shown my credentials. I followed the rules." He paused, his next words quieter, but cutting deeper than any noise. Sometimes the scene finds you, no matter how quiet you are. In that moment, the entire cabin froze. They saw a man under suspicion, but what they were about to witness was the turn that would make the whole system tremble. Golden light streamed through the cabin window, casting a glow across the calm but taut face of Adrian Cole. He sat motionless, hands clasped tightly, breath steady, like a general waiting for the moment to unsheath his sword. In that silence, first class felt like a stage. Every glance, every tilt of the head, every hurried breath became part of the performance. Dana Harlow was different. The false smile had vanished from her lips, replaced by a tight press and eyes lined with strain. She turned sharply, striding toward the cockpit, her uniform rippling with each step like a drumbeat. Passengers whispered, voices low but sharp enough for Adrian to hear fragments. Definitely an upgrade mistake. Or he gamed the points system. First class isn't for everyone. Richard Hale in 2B cleared his throat loudly, as if making sure all could hear. "Finally, someone's doing their job." The words dropped like a stone into still water, sending ripples of suspicion through the cabin. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, listening to his own heartbeat. It wasn't anger, nor fear. It was a familiar fatigue, the weariness of a life spent proving worth in places where respect should have been a given. He remembered his father's words, "You'll have to work twice as hard to be seen half as much. But no matter what, keep smiling." A voice cut through the air from behind, not a whisper this time, but sharp and clear as a blade. Funny how protocol always shows up when it's a black man in first class. Heads turned. It was the teenage girl with her phone still raised, the red light blinking as it recorded. In that instant, the truth stood naked. This was no longer about a boarding pass. It was about who was deemed worthy to sit where. Dana returned, this time with Marcus Vance, the flight officer in charge. He was in his 30s, tall with a steady stride, face carefully neutral, but eyes edged with caution. His voice was even, yet firm. Mr. Cole, we need further verification. It's possible seat 2A was reassigned. Please move to the galley until it's resolved. Adrian lifted his gaze, meeting Marcus's eyes, calm as the sea before a storm. I scanned my ticket at the gate. I've shown it twice to the crew. Each time it reads 2A. What else is there to verify? The cabin fell into silence. Only the faint rattle of luggage wheels on the tarmac outside and the nervous tapping of someone's fingernail on a tray table filled the air. Some passengers began to take sides. A woman in 3A spoke gently, as if soothing a child. No need to make this bigger than it is. It's probably just a mix-up. Any seat will do. Adrian turned toward her, his eyes weary but unwavering. Sometimes the scene comes to you, no matter how quiet you are. The words echoed heavy in the air, leaving her speechless. Marcus Vance frowned, trying to hold his authority. If you refuse to move, I'll have to escalate this. Adrian was silent for a few moments, then nodded slightly, his voice dropping deep and resonant like a church bell. Then escalate, but I will remain in the seat I purchased. The tension swelled like a balloon stretched to its limit, all eyes fixed on 2A. Richard Hale in 2B smirked, muttering under his breath. Told you. Men like him never listen. Adrian didn't turn, didn't argue. His fingers brushed the phone, resting quietly in his coat pocket, the device holding the power to shake the airline's booking network with a single command. But not yet. He wanted them to expose every ounce of prejudice first, so the truth would be undeniable. Outside, the runway glowed gold in the setting sun. In situ, the pressure in the cabin mounted, waiting for the inevitable rupture. Adrian Cole sat tall, eyes fixed forward. He knew this was no longer just a flight. It was a courtroom, a battlefield, and an opportunity. The moment he spoke, the entire system would be forced to face an old but unrelenting question. Who truly has the right to sit in the front row of the world? The cabin had shifted into something uncanny. No longer a simple flight, but a courtroom in the sky. Every stare was a verdict, every whisper a gavel strike. Adrian Cole remained seated in 2A, spine straight, hands folded on his lap. He waited for them to reveal every ounce of arrogance, waited for the rightful moment to act. Dana Harlow stood beside Marcus Vance, her face as rigid as a mask. Her voice rang out, cold and unyielding. Mr. Cole, if you do not move, we will have to report to the captain. This is a security matter, and your cooperation is mandatory. Security? Adrian raised an eyebrow, his voice calm, yet heavy as a stone plunging into water. I am in the right seat, with the right ticket, by every rule. So tell me, where is the security when a man is presumed not to belong here? The entire cabin froze. Tessa Bloom, the teenage girl with her phone streaming live, whispered into her mic. Did you hear that? He said it out loud. This isn't about a seat. This is about bias. Her screen exploded with comments. Hold the line. This is history. Marcus Vance cleared his throat, grasping for control. Sir, I suggest a temporary solution. We can move you to a seat in business class, and your return flight will be upgraded free of charge. This way, everything can be resolved quietly." Adrian turned his head slightly, eyes sharp as blades. "What you just summarized for me is this. You question my identity, you frame my presence as a problem, and you want to buy my silence with another seat. But," he paused, each word striking like a hammer blow, "dignity is not negotiable." Richard Hale in 2B let out a scoff. Good grief, he's just being dramatic. But the smirk on his face evaporated when Adrian pulled a phone from his jacket pocket and unlocked it with his fingerprint. On the screen appeared a hidden interface. Echo 9. A prompt blinked. Status: stand by. Adrian's finger slid across the glass. A command line appeared. Initialize soft freeze protocol. He typed a single word. Echo. The screen flashed green. Deployment confirmed. At that very moment, outside, at airports from Atlanta to Los Angeles, the check in systems began to stall. In Houston, departure boards suddenly displayed unexplained delays. In Miami, baggage carousels stopped mid-rotation. In the Central Command Center, numbers on the control screens spiraled into chaos. Adrian sat motionless, unmoving. Only Tessa Bloom gasped softly, her eyes wide with wonder. "Oh my God, he just did something. The whole system is glitching." Inside the cabin, murmurs spread like wildfire. A woman in 1C glanced at her phone, frowning. "My husband just texted, flights in Dallas are on hold. What's going on?" The whispers swelled. Marcus Vance glanced down at his tablet, his expression tightening. He muttered to Dana, "Ops just flagged a nationwide freeze. This isn't local." Dana darted a look toward Adrian, panic in her eyes, but he remained still, calm as stone. His gaze blazed with unshakable resolve. Then Adrian spoke, his voice no longer just for Marcus or Dana, but for the entire cabin. "For years I've been checked, questioned, told to prove I deserve to be here. But all of you forgot one thing." He paused, his tone deep and resonant, like a drumbeat rolling through the air. "I am not just a passenger. I am the man who built the backbone of the system you rely on." A stunned silence fell. Phones throughout the cabin lifted high, live stream counters ticking upward by the second. Adrian tightened his grip on the phone, eyes locked on Marcus. "This is no longer about a seat. This is about whether the system treats everyone fairly, and I will not rise from this chair until that answer is clear." The cabin erupted in a silence more deafening than sound. Dana stiffened. Marcus was struck dumb. Richard Hale sat with his mouth agape. And in the back row, Tessa Bloom whispered to more than 50,000 viewers, tuned in live. "This isn't just a flight anymore. This is history." Adrian Cole leaned back slightly, his chest rising with steady breaths, his eyes burning bright. He had just opened the door to a storm that would sweep the skies. A storm named Justice. The cabin lights still glowed, but the atmosphere in first class had thickened into something suffocating, heavy as if the air itself had turned solid. Adrian Cole sat motionless in seat 2A, his hand resting on the phone where the Echo 10 icon pulsed green. One more touch and what looked like a technical glitch would swell into a global storm. Marcus Vance, the flight officer, leaned forward, his tablet vibrating with a stream of red alerts. Sweat gathered on his forehead, despite the steady blast of cold air from the vents. Ops is reporting the whole system. Check. In frozen in New York. Boarding delays in Chicago. Baggage halted in Miami. Dana Harlow bit her lip, her hand trembling against the seat back. She glanced at Adrian, and for the first time her eyes flickered with something unfamiliar. Fear. Passengers began receiving messages from relatives at other airports. This is strange. They're saying all Sierra Airways flights are being held. CNN just reported a network-wide outage. The low hum of whispers swelled, waves crashing against the hull. People looked at Adrian with a mix of doubt and awe. He sat there upright, his face calm, almost chilling in its composure. From the back, Tessa Bloom held her phone close, her voice shaking with both fear and excitement. "Do you see this? It all started here, seat 2A, on flight 180. He didn't shout, didn't argue, he just commanded. And the whole airline trembled." The live stream count leapt upward. 20,000, 35,000, 50,000 viewers. Marcus drew a deep breath, forcing his voice steady as he leaned closer to Adrian. "Mr. Cole, if you truly are interfering, please stop. This is a matter of national security." Adrian tilted his head, his voice low and deliberate, each word hammered into place. "Security doesn't live in a seat. It lives in how you treat people. When a system abandons respect, I will force it to stop." Richard Hale in 2B let out a nervous laugh, but it wavered and broke. "All this over a seat? You'd bring down an airline for that?" Adrian turned, his gaze piercing straight through him. "Not for a seat. For the first time, I will not stay silent." The intercom crackled, and Captain Ortega's urgent voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a disruption from Central Operations. Please remain calm. This flight will be delayed until clearance is granted." A collective sigh swept the cabin. Faces tightened, and several phones turned toward Adrian. No one doubted anymore. The outage and the man in 2A were connected. At Sierra Airways headquarters in Houston, entire walls of screens glowed crimson with alerts. Engineers pounded keyboards. Managers sprinted through hallways. On the main display, bold text flashed. "System latency override. Echo signature detected." In the emergency boardroom, CEO Gregory Stanton slammed his hand against the table. "Cole, Adrian Cole. God, he's on flight 180. Get me a line. I want to speak to him directly." In the cabin, Dana received the order through her earpiece, her face drained of color. "Mr. Stanton wants to speak with you." She held out the handset, her voice breaking. Adrian raised an eyebrow, then slowly rose. He moved without haste, each step deliberate, as if the entire cabin were his stage and the moment his declaration. The passengers held their breath. Live stream cameras followed his every movement. Adrian took the receiver, his voice steady, deep, unshaken. "You're hearing me now. This is Adrian Cole. And yes, the disruption your airline is facing began right here in seat 2A. On the other end of the line, CEO Stanton fell silent, struck dumb. A deathly stillness gripped the cabin. Then Adrian continued, his tone cutting like steel though never raised. You want this resolved quietly. I have 3 demands. If not, Echo will move from soft freeze to full shutdown. And when that happens, Sierra Airways will stop flying. First class shuddered, as if shaken by an invisible quake. It was a shock not just for the airline, but for everyone who had ever thought Adrian Cole was merely a black passenger in the wrong seat. Today they learned the truth. He was the man holding the keys to the sky itself. The intercom phone buzzed once, then steadied. The cabin froze, every breath afraid to shatter the tension. Adrian Cole pressed the receiver to his ear, his voice dropping low, steady as a war drum before the storm. Mr. Stanton, can you hear me clearly? On the other end, CEO Gregory Stanton drew in a sharp breath, the sound trembling through the line as he tried to maintain authority. I hear you, Adrian. Let me be clear. We're losing millions of dollars every minute. What do you want? Money? A seat? A public apology? We can arrange. Adrian cut him off, his tone cold and final. I don't want another seat. I don't want blood money. And I don't want some hollow apology buried in the news cycle within 24 hours. He paused, scanning the cabin. Every passenger's gaze locked on him, as if listening to a manifesto delivered in mid-air. 3 things. If Sierra wants its system restored, you will meet 3 demands. There was a shuffle of papers on the other end, Stanton swallowing hard, silent for several seconds. Adrian continued, each word slicing the air like a blade. First, immediate suspension of lead flight attendant Dana Harlow, pending investigation for bias and abuse of authority. No more allegations. No more we'll review. Right now. Dana's face drained of color, her hands gripping the edge of her seat until her knuckles went white. Several passengers raised their phones higher, zooming in on her face. Silence turned into a public courtroom, every stare a judge. Second, Adrian's voice rang like a bell of judgment. An independent audit of all seat assignments, upgrades, and customer service procedures. No half-hearted reports, no cover-ups. Public, independent, real. Marcus Vance lowered his head, his face burning hot. He had believed he was simply following procedure, but now realized that procedure itself could be a blade. Third, Adrian's voice dropped, heavy as a hammer. Sierra must implement a customer-driven reporting system, allowing passengers to file discrimination complaints directly, with real consequences attached. No more empty apologies, no more promises of retraining. Consequences. Discipline. Change. The line went silent. The sound of frantic typing and hurried whispers bled through from the boardroom in Houston. Stanton's voice finally returned, weary and sharp with anger. Do you realize what you're demanding? This is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, not an ethics seminar. Adrian narrowed his eyes, a bitter smile flickering. You're right. This isn't an ethics seminar. This is a test of humanity. And your company has already failed. Right here in seat 2A. The cabin trembled, not from movement, but from the weight of his words. Richard Hale in 2B, once smug, now sat flushed and silent. The woman in 1C leaned toward Adrian, her eyes glinting with encouragement, whispering, "Yes, keep going." Tessa Bloom murmured into her phone, her voice trembling. "Do you hear this? He's laid out 3 demands, and he's not negotiating." The livestream count surged. 75,000, 90,000. Stanton snapped back, his voice cracking. "You have 72 hours to make demands like that, Adrian. Not 72 seconds. Calm down, we will." Adrian cut him off again, his voice sharp as an axe. "No. You have until this flight is cleared for takeoff. If not, Echo 9 will move beyond soft freeze. It will become full shutdown. And when that happens, Sierra Airways won't have a single flight left in the sky." Noise erupted on the line, panicked voices overlapping in Houston's boardroom. Stanton fell silent for several seconds, then growled through the line. "I need to speak with the board. Hold the line." Adrian placed the receiver back in its cradle. He turned to the cabin, his eyes blazing. A dense silence lingered for a moment before it shattered into hushed murmurs. He just forced the CEO to back down. This is broadcasting live everywhere. Adrian sank back into seat 2A, his gaze drifting out toward the runway glowing gold in the sunset. He did not smile. He did not raise a fist. He simply sat still, letting the world understand that from one disputed seat, the entire system had been forced to its knees. First class was no longer a space of luxury in the sky. It had become the eye of the storm. Every passenger, every glance, every breath was drawn to seat 2A, where Adrian Cole sat upright, hands clasped on his lap, his gaze fixed on the window, yet his will cutting through every wall around him. A small chime rang. It was the cabin's network signal. Dozens of phones buzzed at once as news began to flood in. Breaking: Sierra Airways faces global technical disruption. Insider sources: Echo 9, developed by Aegis Grid, has just been activated. In 14C, a young student gasped, covering her mouth. "Oh my God, this isn't just a seating mistake. He's the one who controls the entire reservation network." She turned to her friend. "I'm watching history unfold right in front of me." Dana Harlow stood pale near the galley, her confidence from 20 years of training collapsing in an instant. In her chest, a cold whisper echoed. One word, one attitude, and now my entire career could shatter. Her fingers clutched the seat back so hard they trembled uncontrollably. Marcus Vance, still holding the posture of an officer, no longer had sharp eyes. He slumped into the jump seat, his tablet flashing red alerts. A painful realization broke open inside him. I called it protocol, but what kind of protocol makes a human being a suspect just because of the color of his skin? Beyond the cabin, the dominoes began to fall. At Dallas, long lines of passengers murmured beneath boards flashing delayed. In New York, a pilot stepped out of the cockpit, explaining helplessly, "We can't start the engines. Central control is locked." In Miami, luggage piled high as the belts froze. On CNN, a reporter spoke live from Houston. "We have just confirmed that the disruption traces back to a passenger on Sierra Flight 180. That passenger is none other than Adrian Cole, CEO of Aegis Grid, the firm providing the backbone technology for the airline's entire system." Inside the cabin, whispers spread. The woman in 1C leaned over, her voice trembling with awe. "You're not just holding your seat. You're holding dignity for all of us." Richard Hale in 2B, once smug and dismissive, now sat in silence, pale, staring at his own shaking hands. Tessa Bloom whispered into her phone, her live stream hitting 20,000 viewers. "Do you see this? This isn't about a seat anymore. This is proof of one truth. A system is only powerful until the person who built it says, 'Enough.'" A ding sounded from the intercom. Captain Ortega's voice came through, urgent and strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are unable to depart the gate at this time. Central Command is in emergency session. Please remain calm." A murmur rippled through the cabin. An emergency session? The CEO must be negotiating with him right now. My God, one man sitting still can ground the skies. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment. Behind his lids, memories returned. His father, bent in a construction uniform, sweat dripping as he reminded him he had to work twice as hard to be recognized halfway. His daughter Maya, sobbing on the phone after a store security guard followed her like a thief. Adrian inhaled deeply and opened his eyes. Silence had no place anymore. He set his phone gently on the tray table. The green screen glowed with words visible to anyone nearby. Echo 9. Latency override active. Marcus stared at the screen, swallowing hard. His voice finally broke through, low and trembling, but sincere. "Mr. Cole, I should have stopped this long ago. Not the system, but the way we saw you. I'm sorry." Adrian turned to him, eyes stern but not cold. He nodded once. "True apology begins with action. Remember that." In Houston, CEO Gregory Stanton returned on the line, his voice crushed under the weight of shareholders, the press, and the man in seat 2A. "Mr. Cole, we will consider it. But please, give us time," Adrian cut him off, steady and unyielding, his voice carrying through the cabin. "There is no time. Either Sierra changes now, or the skies will close." A silence heavy as concrete fell across the cabin. Then phones buzzed, headlines exploding across the world. Hashtag first class, while black, #1, trending. Echo, protocol, justice in the sky. The world outside was boiling over, but inside the cabin, every eye turned to a single figure, the man in 2A, who had transformed his seat into a stage for justice. The cabin phone buzzed again. Dana Harlow's hand shook as she lifted the receiver, passing it to Adrian as though it weighed 100 pounds. He pressed it to his ear, the voice on the other end strained and fractured. "Adrian, this is Stanton. I agree to speak directly. The board is in emergency session. We need to end this now." Adrian's expression did not change. He glanced across the cabin, faces waiting, phones glowing, cameras capturing every second. The world had turned first class into a courtroom. His voice was slow, steady, and firm. "Then make it public, Stanton. No more closed-door negotiations. I want you to confirm in front of these passengers that Sierra Airways commits to change." There was hesitation on the line. Stanton was likely staring at dozens of shareholders, lawyers, and executives, sweat soaking his collar. At last his voice came, strained and stiff. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Gregory Stanton, CEO of Sierra Airways. I want to extend my apologies to all passengers aboard Flight 180, and I confirm we will initiate an independent investigation, suspend the chief flight attendant involved immediately, and implement a customer reporting system for all discriminatory behavior. The cabin erupted in shock. Whispers burst out. Phones rose higher, capturing the moment. Dana Harlow collapsed into a seat near the galley, eyes wide as though waking from a nightmare. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably. Marcus Vance turned away, face burning with shame, but in his eyes a flicker of resolve appeared. If I stay in this job, I will never stay silent again. In seat 1C, a silver-haired woman nodded, her eyes wet. This is what we needed to see. Richard Hale in 2B no longer dared look at Adrian. He snapped his iPad shut, hands trembling as they twisted a bottle cap, desperate to hide his own smallness. Adrian pressed the receiver tighter, his voice low but resonant. Mr. Stanton, words are easy. I want a written statement today, a public declaration across every Sierra channel. And remember, Echo 9 is still running. If you break your word, your skies collapse. Stanton swallowed hard, his reply a faint whisper. Agreed. Our lawyers will draft it within the hour. The statement will go out to every customer and every outlet. Adrian nodded once, his voice firm and final. Good. And when that statement is released, Echo will stop. In the cabin, Tessa Bloom clutched her phone, her voice breaking with emotion. Do you hear that? He just forced the CEO to commit right in front of us. This isn't about one first-class seat anymore. This is a lesson for an entire system. Her live stream shot past 200,000 viewers, the chat flooding. Justice, Echo 9 forever. 2A is history. Moments later, passengers' phones lit up with new emails from Sierra Airways. We accept full responsibility and immediately initiate comprehensive reforms. An independent audit has been authorized. A customer reporting system will launch within 30 days. Personnel found in violation will be suspended effective immediately. Notification chimes echoed across the cabin. The woman in 1C wept openly. A young man in 5D gripped his armrest, whispering, For the first time, I see a corporation bow its head. Adrian lowered the phone. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. There was no smile of triumph, only a long breath released after 8 minutes of unbroken resolve. Inside him, a voice rose. Maya, my daughter, today your father did not stay silent. First class, once thick with suspicion, now swelled with a silent chorus of respect. No one saw a black man in the wrong seat anymore. They were witnessing a leader who had made the skies themselves bow to dignity. The cabin door remained shut, but outside the world had exploded. Inside, phones buzzed relentlessly, screens glowing with breaking headlines in red. Sierra Airways commits to reform after Flight 180 incident. Adrian Cole, the man in seat 2A, forces CEO Stanton to bow. Hashed Echo 9. First class. While black, over 1 million mentions in just 30 minutes. Passengers on the flight sat frozen, still reeling from what they had witnessed, being elevated into a symbol. A young man in 5D leapt to his feet, his voice cracking with emotion. I never believed a single individual could force a corporation to change, but I just saw it with my own eyes. The woman in 1C wiped her eyes, turning to her daughter beside her. Remember this moment. When your child asks you what justice means, you can say it began with a seat in the sky. Richard Hale in 2B, once smug, now bowed his head, his face flushed red. He whispered like a man confessing. I was wrong. I looked at him and only saw skin color, not the person. Adrian did not turn. He let silence be his answer. Outside, the media erupted. CNN cut into live coverage. The screen split. One side showing the cabin of Flight 180 through Tessa Bloom's live stream. The other showing rows of Sierra Airways shareholders packed into a boardroom in Houston. NBC ran the headline, Echo 9 System, when technology becomes a voice for justice. Twitter flooded with #Seat2A, spreading into more than 40 countries. Inside the cabin, Tessa clutched her phone, her voice trembling but clear. Friends, 250,000 people are watching. I'm just a high school student, but I saw a man hold his seat and force the world to look again. Comments poured in. Stay strong. We witness. 2A forever. Marcus Vance bowed his head, the tablet in his hands dead with its network disabled. He exhaled heavily and whispered, Justice isn't in the protocol. It lives in the moment you choose which side you stand on. Adrian slowly opened his eyes. Before him, the faces that had once been filled with doubt now looked reborn as witnesses. He did not see enemies. He saw an opportunity for them to carry this story further than this flight. He stood, his voice not loud but resonant across the cabin. Today, Seat 2A is not just mine. It belongs to everyone who was ever told they didn't belong in a place they had paid to be. You have seen it now. When silence ends, change begins. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then strong, spreading through the cabin. Some wept openly. In Houston, Stanton watched the live feed, his face pale. He knew this was no longer an internal crisis. It had become a movement. And Adrian Cole's name was now bound to the word shareholders, customers, and the world were chanting dignity. In New York, passengers stranded at boarding gates turned on live streams, pointing at screens. This is why our flight is delayed, and I am proud of it. In Atlanta, a group of students chanted Seat 2A across the terminal. In Los Angeles, a commentator declared, There is no doubt. This is the Rosa Parks of the sky. In the cabin, Adrian settled back into his seat, exhaling as though a boulder had been lifted. Yet he did not feel victory, only responsibility. Maya, his daughter, appeared in his mind, her voice like a whisper. Dad, today the whole world saw what I always believed. You were never in the wrong seat. Adrian closed his eyes, his heart heavy. He understood. This was only the beginning. The storm had just begun. The cabin door remained closed, but the chorus of vibrating phones rang out like the soundtrack of a new era. On passengers' screens, Sierra Airways' official statement glowed in bold letters. We acknowledge a serious failure in our service protocol. The board has approved an independent audit, the launch of a customer reporting system for discrimination, and the immediate suspension of Chief Purser Dana Harlow. A ripple of murmurs spread. The woman in seat 1C showed her screen to her daughter, her voice breaking. "Do you see this? This is the power of one person who dared to stand." Dana Harlow sat pale, her hands trembling. The words in the email were like a mirror forcing her to confront herself. She remembered every doubtful glance, every time she held a boarding pass up to the light, every so-called procedure that was in truth rejection. And now, before hundreds of thousands of witnesses, she was forced to pay the price. She stood, legs unsteady, her voice cracking. "Cole, I was wrong. I thought I was just following protocol. But the truth is, I should never have turned protocol into an excuse to diminish someone. I am sorry." The cabin fell silent. Some passengers looked at her with sympathy, others with anger. Tessa Bloom lifted her phone and whispered to her viewers, "You are witnessing something rare. A real apology, spoken at the scene itself." Marcus Vance, the young officer, lowered his head. He drew a deep breath, then stepped into the aisle. His tablet still blinked with alerts, but his voice was steady. "I have to speak as well. I stayed silent when I should have intervened. I thought silence kept the cabin calm. But in truth, it only prolonged injustice. I apologize to you, Mr. Cole, and I promise this will not happen again while I wear this uniform." A few scattered claps rang out, then spread. It was not applause of celebration, but recognition, for someone who had stripped away the mask of authority to return to being human. In the back rows, a young student lifted his phone, pointing it at his own face. "I never thought a flight could teach me about justice. But I will never be silent again. Not in school, not at work. Seat 2A showed me that silence is also a choice, and it is the worst choice." The cabin erupted with shouts. "That's right! Speak out!" Adrian Cole remained upright in seat 2A. He looked at Dana, then Marcus, then across the cabin. His voice rolled evenly, not loud, but striking each heart. "An apology is the beginning. Action is the end. When you leave this flight, remember this. Fairness does not arrive. On a medicine somos on its own. It must be demanded, defended, and protected, even when it makes others uncomfortable." The cabin sank into thoughtful silence. No one saw him as a passenger under suspicion anymore. They saw him as a guide, opening the road everyone should have taken long ago. Outside, the media exploded. News networks replayed Stanton bowing as he read the statement. Commentators called it the Seat 2A Revolution. In New York, crowds chanted the hashtag #Echo9. In Chicago, students raised signs reading, "Dignity is not negotiable." Inside the cabin, Tessa Bloom whispered into her camera, "This is not just a flight anymore. This is where an entire system was forced to face the truth." Adrian's gaze drifted toward the window. Out on the runway, airport lights flickered and the sky awaited. But he knew. Takeoff was only the next step. True change was the longest journey the entire world had just begun. The cabin screen clock blinked, marking nearly 2 hours since it all began. Yet for the passengers, It felt like a lifetime where truth had been hidden, smothered under procedures and polite smiles. But today, at seat 2A, it had been dragged into the light. Captain Ortega's voice came over the intercom, deep but lighter now. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've received clearance from control. The system is stabilizing. We are preparing for takeoff." A wave of relief swept through. Some clapped, a few cried, not because the flight was resuming, but because they knew they had just witnessed change. The plane rolled down the runway. Engines roared, rattling the windows. In the cabin, all leaned forward, but their eyes remained fixed on Adrian Cole, the man who had turned a first-class seat into a symbol. Richard Hale in 2B turned, his voice hoarse. "Mr. Cole, I owe you an apology. I judged you wrongly. I thought you didn't belong here. But now I know I'm the one who needs to learn how to sit in the right place." Adrian glanced at him, his gaze kind yet firm. He nodded slightly and said only one thing. "What matters is what you do after you've seen the truth." The woman in 1C placed her hand on his, her voice trembling. "When my granddaughter asks me what justice means, I will tell her about seat 2A, about a man who refused to move, and because of that, the whole world had to stop." Adrian smiled faintly, though his eyes were wet. He thought of Maya, his daughter, watching all of this unfold on a screen somewhere. He wished he could hold her right now, to let her know her father was not just a CEO, but an example. The engines roared, the fuselage shuddered, then lifted from the ground. The cabin tilted, but Adrian felt a strange calm. He looked out the window, the airport lights shrinking into tiny streaks below. The sky opened wide. Just like justice. Hira thought, it cannot be caged on the ground forever. In the back, Tessa Bloom ended her live stream. Her face glowed pink in the screen's light. She looked around, then whispered to the passenger beside her. "I'm only 17, but after today, I know I'll never be silent again. If one person can stop the entire sky, then we can make this world move." Adrian closed his eyes, leaning against the headrest. In his mind, he heard his father's words. "You must do twice as much to be seen, half as much." Today he had done more than that, not just for himself, but for millions watching. A single tear slid down his cheek, and he didn't wipe it away. It belonged to memory, to legacy. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude. The cabin was quiet. No whispers, no cameras. Passengers sat still, each with their own thoughts, but all knew they had crossed a milestone history would not forget. Adrian opened his laptop, staring at the screen flashing its final line. Echo 9. Suspension. Awaiting restart. He closed it and exhaled deeply. Echo was no longer needed. Words and actions had done the rest. In that moment, in every passenger's heart, a new belief was planted. Dignity is not a privilege. It is a right. And when one person dares to hold on to it, the whole world must change. The plane pierced through the clouds, leaving behind a sky forever altered, a sky rewritten from seat 2A. That day in the sky, a single first-class seat became a symbol. Adrian Cole did not just hold on to his place, he held on to the dignity of millions who had been dismissed. And from that moment, the world understood. Justice does not always need to be shouted. Sometimes it only needs quiet determination. If you believe that dignity cannot be bargained, leave a comment with the words, "Dignity first." Do not forget to hit like and subscribe to follow the next stories, where a single small act can change the entire world.